So, because you brought it up, I want to pick your brain because, boy, you've been around Nick Sirianni the whole time, just like me. This guy was pretty competent about his offense, even though the rest of us looked at it and said, this thing is not the most aesthetic way to play football or things like that. And then all of a sudden he wakes up one day and he's changing the whole system to Kyle Shanahan like or Sean McVay like. And with McVay, he beats him every time. And that seems to be sort of rubs him the wrong way, that people think Sean McVay is the greatest coach in the history of the world. What from your conspiracy mind, since you brought up conspiracies, where do you think this came from? Do you think Nick just woke up one day and said, I got to go in a different direction? Or do you think it was directed?
I think it sounds that way. I mean, Howie's deflecting all these questions about Sean Mannion and the interview process. He's deferring them all to Nick. And Nick seems like he's in pretty full control of hiring a coach. So, I guess there could be a conspiracy theory. I'm of the belief that Nick likes to evolve. I think he's a coach. He's young enough where he adapts. He's not married to any one thing. If it's not working, he's going to switch up and go with whatever the flavor of the month is, so to speak. I just think he's an adaptable head coach, and that's what they like about him. And I think the Eagles, Roseman and Lurie, obviously it's a collaborative effort, but like Nick said, somebody has to pull the trigger. And I think it was Nick pulling the trigger on hiring Sean Mannion. I really do. And whether that was his decision to, switch up schemes and go with more of the Shanahan McVay style scheme, I think it could be. I think he did wake up and say, hey, we need to evolve this offense. It's gotten stale. There's some things we do well, and we'll sprinkle in parts of that. But he wants a complete overhaul of a lot of the schemes and the system that they were running. And I think that's probably a credit to Nick for wanting to do that.
Ed, how about a conspiracy on that? I mean, what's the easiest way for Jeffrey Lurie, who was rumored to want to fire Nick at week 4 of last season, the Super Bowl season? What's the easiest way to move on from a Super Bowl winning head coach is you got to put every decision on him. It almost feels to me, Ed, and I don't have any information, but this is what my perception is. Put Nick on an island, let him make all the decisions, and if it does fall flat, it's a lot easier to move on from that head coach than, if you went a different direction and you were all tied up in it together. It feels like Nick is a little bit out on an island, more so this year than ever. Am I reaching, or you think there's some merit to what I'm saying?
Yeah, there could be some merit. I just don't think he's on an island by himself. I think, like I said, it's collaborative. I'm sure he's talking to Howie and Jeffrey, and they're in the room together, and they're talking to these candidates together. And then Nick will give his reason for wanting to hire somebody. So, he's the one pulling the trigger. And I don't think he's on an island by himself. I think he has input, obviously, from the GM and owner, and maybe others too. So I don't think they're setting him up to be able to fire him. I think if they don't like what he's doing, they'll just fire him. They don't have to say, well, he made a bad decision hiring Sean Mannion. They'll just fire him. But I think Nick has a pretty long leash, to be honest with you, in this organization. And, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, we have a coach here that's won 65 games. That's the third most in team history, counting the playoffs. We've been to the playoffs 5 years. I don't think you're going to find a better coach out there. You're going to be hard pressed to find somebody better. I know a lot of fans love what's on the other side of the fence with, some of these young coaching candidates, Clint Kubiak, whoever else you want to mention. But it's not easy to find a coach that can win 65 football games in his first 5 years and go to the playoffs 5 straight years. Dan Campbell hasn't done it. I know he had less when he took over with the Lions, but, Sirianni's the kind of coach where he's one win away from being tied for second on that list in Eagles history behind Greasy Neal with 66 career wins.
Greasy Neal.
Yeah. And then there's a long leap to Andy Reid at 140 wins. But my point is I don't think they're in any rush to get rid of this guy. I don't think they're setting him up to fail by saying, hey, you make all the decisions, and if they suck, we're going to can you. I think if the team sucks and the culture sucks and the locker room stinks and the chemistry's bad, then maybe those are reasons you would move on from Nick. But I think it's going to take a lot for the Eagles to want to get rid of this head coach.
I agree with most of what you said. I mean, it's really hard. I think Nick's resume speaks for itself, and then you have this disconnect where it's like, some will say, well, Nick Sirianni's got to get out of Sean Mannion's way, who's 33 years old, 2 years coaching, basically was on the field as a third string quarterback a couple of years ago. And the guy's won 65 NFL games, has got to get out of his way. I kind of look at it as, they see a lot of upside in Sean Mannion. They think he's got a high ceiling as a coach. My question to you, Ed, is does Philadelphia, both the organization and the fan base, have the patience to live through the growing pains of a young coach with a big upside?
Probably not. In fact, I would say definitely not. This isn't a fan base that, has patience on its resume. But I'm excited about Sean Mannion as a hire. I can't wait till we can actually meet him, sit down, talk to him, pick his brain a little bit. He certainly had glowing references from the staff in Green Bay. LaFleur spoke highly of him, said he's a head coach in the making. The one red flag, or if you want to call it that, or the one concern is the fact that he hasn't ever called plays. Now, maybe some fans will have to be patient, with the growing phase of him calling plays, but maybe not. Maybe he comes in and he's just a natural at it. He's played football in this league as a backup quarterback, like you said. I think it was for 8 years he spent in the league, so he has a different perspective than maybe Kevin Patullo had. Of course, Kellen Moore was a backup quarterback in this league. Led him to a Super Bowl, did a nice job in New Orleans his first year as a head coach. Doug Pederson, backup quarterback, took the Eagles to a Super Bowl. So I like that part of the resume. And, when the Eagles certainly cast a wide net to find Sean Mannion, and they didn't jump at the first guy. And I think, to Nick's credit, and he was patient and he wanted to hear what he wanted to hear. And Sean Mannion came in and just blew him away. And he's like, all right, this is our guy. Like, you knew right away, love at first sight type of thing. I think that's what it was with Sean Mannion. What's interesting, I thought, and I don't know how true this is, but I read a story where Sean Mannion, when he was 7 years old, went to a game with his father, who was a football coach at the time, and he brought one of those yellow legal pads, and he took notes throughout the whole game about the game, questions, plays, this and that. And he showed it to his dad. His dad kept it and gave it to him when he got into the NFL. He said, this was from you when you were 7 years old. And it kind of reminded me of the fact that Andy Reid showed up with his big binder in Philadelphia for his first job interview back in '99. He had this big binder of information. Like he was a student of the game. And I think that's what Sean Mannion is. And that's one of the things I'm kind of excited to get into with him a little bit when we meet him, is that love of the game and how it manifested itself with this yellow legal line paper notebook that he took all these notes during a game. His dad kept it and gave it to him, 20 years later or whatever it was. So I think he's a student of the game like Andy Reid was. And I'm excited to see exactly what kind of stamp he's going to put on this offense.
It's going to be interesting to